industries across the region that are supporting aerospace, defence, pharmaceutical, life science. We have got such a resilient a set of industries that are based on the South Coast. So I thought it would be interesting to actually hear from our experts about what are the key drivers and what are the challenges that they are experiencing, so that you guys can actually bring forward the right type of developments within your commercial real estate and within your advice. So let's kick off. So firstly, we've got James, who is the principal of UTC College, Richard, who's the CEO of the Business Magazine, Robin, who is also the CEO of Southampton Science University. Sorry, Science Park. Sorry, I missed that bit word out. Elaine, who is the founding of Capilaux, and then Michael, and I can't say the name. Corstorphine. Sorry. Right. Corstorphine, right. And right. Right, so I'm going to kick off. So firstly to James, the microphone hopefully should be on.
I think we're working.
Yeah, good. So in your role as UTC College Principal, how do you perceive the current state of the STEM landscape on the South Coast? And what challenges and opportunities stand out for education institutions to support the STEM education and the career development in the region?
It's a really interesting area we live in terms of population density and excellent transport links, particularly in the Southern region, the South Coast. So we set up UTC Portsmouth as a STEM-focused education establishment for sort of college age and GCSE age, if you can remember back to those days. And what we see is from industry in the area, as Nella's mentioned, there's fantastic thriving industry that is crying out for a talent pool that is highly trained and skilled in the areas they need. And I talk to a lot of these partners because, in my view, the role of education should be in providing that talent pipeline to industry partners. And the overwhelming message I get is young people aren't skilled in these areas. And so I see a lot of almost education in this country is done by accident. We educate young people in GCSEs and A-levels, but I would imagine most of us in this room couldn't really tell what is on those A-levels specifically and how it relates to your industry sectors. So one of the most exciting things for me is talking to industry partners and saying, what do you actually need? A maths A-level is one thing, and great, it's not easy to study, and I'm sure many of you would have done, but what are the skills that are missing from the maths A-level? Because that would have been set 10 years ago, and the world's changed quite quickly. If I take computing, 80% of students at UC Portsmouth study computing. That's huge, but the computing A-level is already out of date. So how do we liaise with industry partners to deploy AI, automation, robotics, because that's what the industry need is. And so how can education be that link on that talent pipeline? How am I doing there with the question now?
Yeah, that's great. So Richard, are you able to contribute in terms of that partnership between institutions like James and the UTC? How is that actually nurturing talent for the businesses in the region?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I come at this from a magazine perspective. I'm not an expert in this area. We just write about what we see. And I think one of the interesting things about our region itself is it is the region that attracts certain areas of STEM by default, by the fact we only have to look outside these doors and to see that actually we've been experts in this region in STEM for hundreds of years. Not recently, you can go and see the Mary Rose and know that was built in Portsmouth. And I think that part of that expertise has been is reflected across the whole of the southern region. So in terms of institutions, I've been speaking to the guys. The South Coast Institute of Technology is a recently opened establishment, so they're brand new. You know, it's I think it's about 14, 15 million pounds worth of investment from government, and the amount of investment that they're taking from that into developing the various universities. So that's a collaboration between Southampton and Portsmouth Uni, along with 5 colleges. I'll probably get this wrong, forgive me, but I did write it down. Hammond College, we've got Isle of Wight, we've got Brockenhurst, South Downs, and Eastleigh. That's probably fine. And all of those are getting investment in STEM, whether it's engineering centres, new design capabilities, etc. And what we're doing is bridging that gap between the student hopefully coming up with an education that is exactly what businesses are asking for. From my perspective, when I interview businesses in the South Coast and ask them, what are their biggest challenges? It's skills. I mean, I'm sure everybody in this room would agree. Finding people with the right skill set will stay with you long enough that your investment is returned is one of the biggest challenges we've faced for years. So I think that the gap is bridged because I think the big difference with what James is doing and other institutions similar is they're working with businesses and they're actually engaging with companies, creating business advisory boards, inviting sort of guest lecturers from business to come in and help train, teach the children students, that's the word I was looking for, teach the students about things that are really practical for the role, and I think that's super exciting. I've gone on, haven't I? That's the danger for me.
I'm actually going to just go straight to Robin, actually, so it's good that you're going in this order, because you obviously just talked about the partnerships and Southampton Science Park you're pretty much doing this, right? So I want to know if you can explain a little bit more in terms of how do you actually connect these STEM startups and enterprises with funding, the incubation support and business services that you're providing.
Okay, so for us at the Science Park, that's really one of the key things, trying to get the companies working together. Collaboration is really key to that. And central to what we do and what we often say is different for us as an active landlord rather than a passive landlord is the support that we offer to those early stage businesses. This comes in 2 forms really at the Science Park. We've got formal support. We've got a business acceleration program, our Catalyst program. We take early stage businesses, put them through an acceleration program, hoping to accelerate their growth and accelerate their development. But there's also a lot of informal networking that helps, and from a real estate perspective, having those areas within the park where people can meet, where they can collaborate. We've got a conference centre that we encourage people to do networking events, just to bring the community together. Because I think particularly in STEM, it's probably true of other areas, but more so I think in STEM, that collaboration is really key to companies being able to develop and grow their businesses.
Yeah, I think it's actually creating that robust ecosystem, isn't it? So that you can actually thrive off each other. And it's something that Rachel said in the office panel, that landlords are actually having to work much harder to make sure that you're actually supporting businesses. It's not about renting an office or per square foot. It's actually how can you enable a company to thrive?
Absolutely. We're seeing that more and more companies are a lot more demanding of the space that they're having. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, so actually this is great because Michael, this is probably where you, in terms of your experience, so what are the key design principles and considerations that when creating these collaborative spaces for STEM and innovation, like Robin had said about these hubs and research parks, what are you experiencing? Can you share some good examples?
Well, I think I'd probably like to start a bit more of a macro scale, really, because I think the sector itself really strives on that or needs that idea of collaboration and the supportive environment for collaboration. And we often talk about clustering, really, where various aspects within the sector, be it life science, be it advanced manufacturing or other technologies. And of course, within this region, you've got the space aspect of the cluster. You've got marine technologies. You've got all of those sorts of things with some fantastic academia institutions and other government bodies. All these things need to come together and need to therefore support and attract the companies to those spaces. Now, once you've effectively established that cluster, then the opportunities for effectively creating a vision for the place, and be that through sort of zonal redevelopment and a catalyst for regeneration, because you can bring and remodel and replan those sorts of areas, or if you've got a science park already, and you've really got to then think about the long-term future about how that works. So I guess what I'm saying is you start with the cluster and the idea of bringing it together, but you then have to back that up with a strong vision and master plan. And I think that's certainly where local government and government organisations like initiatives like Capilaux and UKIRI and what have you come together and support that environment. And if you create that vision, if you create that robust master plan, then you'll bring together those organisations, which is what you want to do, and then attract the talent to go with it because it's a place you want to live. The other thing I was going to say with that, of course, is that there's quite a strong drive towards urbanisation and where people want to actually work where there's other amenities available to them. And again, you can use those sort of academic institutes and other healthcare institutes as a catalyst and build around them and help with the regeneration. So that's from a sort of macro level, but as you then curate the master plan, it's then actually looking at interconnectivity, strong linkages between the buildings, between the occupiers. Shared amenity is really, really important and vital. Different transport links and integrating it into that transportation movability and linkages that way. Getting rid of the car, not getting rid of cars because we all have to have a car, don't we? But putting them out of the space, putting them around the back rather than buildings dotted around surrounded with car parks. So that's for me what you're doing, and then you're creating a campus that makes it an attractive space, and again something where people feel that they're part of a community, and that again encourages that level of collaboration.
Thank you very much. I think just passing over to Elaine, because I think you've got some really interesting insight. Because you're an entrepreneur, you are in the aerospace in terms of recruitment, so I think your insight is going to be quite key. But in particular on that recruitment, obviously Michael touched about the war for talent. What was your observation from the aerospace sector in terms of how can the real estate industry provide the attractive kind of working environment that kind of has been talked about?
Well, I think where people had the opportunity to work from home for such a long time, and now hybrid working is something that candidates absolutely demand. They're not looking to come into your standard office space anymore. They're actually looking to attend a place, like the science park, where people actually really want to go and want to feel part of a community, where it's not just going into work to work at my desk, it's going into work to see my colleagues, to collaborate, to go and socialise. That's the only reason people are feeling the need to come into the office, especially in a service-based role, where when it comes to STEM attracting talent, some engineering roles absolutely require a presence in the office. And so we all need to play our part in making those places attractive. And that starts from the very beginning part of the process.
Thank you. I think, James, when I visited the UTC in Portsmouth, I think in terms of the space specification, it's very high. So ultimately, you're not fundamentally doing the standard academic regime. You're guiding your students to perform at industry standards. So everything that they see, as soon as they leave the UTC, they can just walk in straight into an industry. That's right. Yeah. Just explain a little bit about that, because what I'm interested is that the occupiers or the businesses that are operating in the region, they've got to be at the same sort of level of what you are providing from an education point of view.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that, and it goes back to what Elaine was saying about the kind of questions young people pre-university are beginning to ask about what the workplace will look like that they're going into. And the ethics is a big thing, and a feeling sense of belonging. They're asking more and more of that every single year compared to previous years where it might have been the wage or that sort of thing. There's a lot more that plays on their mind. But likewise, though, that specialist education. So a lot of employers are saying we don't want to take on young people and then have to train them up from scratch in our area of specialism. And so, as Nella was mentioning, in the niche we occupy, which is that high-end technical education, to use an example from our partners in the Royal Navy and BAE Systems, they tell us the specification they'd expect their end-level apprentices to be at. And so we train young people in how to think and behave in an office environment, in a working environment, but also get skilled up to the level where actually when they're employed, because they do get employed very quickly by these big industries, the industry knows they're not having to retrain, and it saves them a lot of money in training costs, but also with those interactions between the industry and the students and the college, they know what they're getting, they can headhunt, and it very much is, there is a market out there for industries that are proactive. A lot of work with universities, which I think is fantastic, but actually young people are beginning to make decisions at 14, sometimes even younger, and so having a presence there and being a known entity for young people can be a massive factor in whether they decide to go and work in your environment or in your sector.
Yeah, absolutely. I joke all the time because my son is 3 and he's already telling me that he wants to be a robotics scientist. And that's off the back of me going to visit your school and telling him what you guys were doing. And he's 3 years old, so you've got to start early. Robin, in terms of being a landlord and hearing everything that's been said, what are you doing to create the right type of environment for these STEM? And in terms of is it an office, is it a lab? What improvements are you doing?
Well, it's both offices and labs. We're a community of tech businesses at Science Park, so we've got to provide the sort of space that those sort of businesses need. Obviously, if it's life sciences, if it's medtech, laboratory space is key. If it's IT development, computing development, office space is fine. But we're really trying to provide the environment where those companies can recruit the sorts of staff that they need. What I hear a lot from the tech companies, is about the pipeline of skills coming through. It's very good to hear that we've got specialist places who are delivering those sort of skills. But we're trying to think about well-being and the environment. What sort of place do companies want to have as their office space? What's going to attract staff into the space? We were hearing this morning about not wanting to force people to come into the office, but provide them with the environment where they want to come in. So we're trying to provide the amenities, the coffee shop, the gym, the nursery that people need. We've got a lovely conservation area at the Science Park. Those sort of amenities are there for the benefit of the staff who base themselves at the Science Park, and it really is key to those companies being able to attract the right people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think we've spoken about it quite a lot, and actually probably Michael's probably best placed, but in terms of the sustainability, it's about making sure that we're creating resilient real estate in terms of the infrastructure. So what sort of architectural elements and technologies are you creating to kind of future-proof the environment to support the STEM industry?
Well, obviously, yes. That resilience and future flexibility and adaptability are incredibly important. And we heard this morning clearly about the struggles that we have around the infrastructure, and obviously this particular sector having quite high demands on energy and water and various other aspects that sit within it. So the projects that we look at are very much around pushing that agenda very strongly. Very high degrees of sustainability and energy or reduction in carbon, as it were, aspirations. We sit and develop frameworks for looking at these things that can be based on BREEAM assessments and neighbours and the like. The well-being aspect of it is very important as well. So it's important creating that right environment. So yeah, it's really just about looking at how we got alternative energy generation, how we can lower the energy demands, looking at how we can reuse buildings as well. I mean, again, that circular aspect is really important. We're doing a really interesting project at the moment, which is to convert a shopping mall into a science centre in the centre of Cambridge, which our sustainability credentials are great, because it's a whole repurposing of what is a struggling asset into something which is obviously booming and will bring future economic benefit to the area as well. So yeah, looking at alternative uses, looking at repurposing, looking at energy conservation and the like, and there are lots of aspects to it, and embedding that within the design solutions that we're coming up with.
And the notion of working from anywhere, obviously Cambridge and creating a life science environment like that is going to be amazing. I guess, how do we create that on the South Coast?
Well, again, I think it's around how you create the bigger vision. So it's that master plan. It's about then looking at particular areas that you can look at repurposing, that you can look at regenerating, and in a sense driving a master plan and a vision for that particular area that can then repurpose buildings and assets that are struggling, because they're struggling within places that actually some people wants to be revitalised. The young people want to be in that part of the cities and life. Elaine's desperate to add on here.
Well, I just want to add, I guess for the audience members, how can they add to this process? It can be your creativity that sparks the idea. So it might feel like in the process you feel powerless, but actually your suggestions, your ideas could spark thought with the architects, could spark thought with the landlords. And so everybody can play their part in the process of creating a thriving South Coast.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only thing I would add, that I think the people we speak to, you mentioned clustering, and I think creating centres of expertise is really exciting, from the journalist perspective, but also, for the businesses. And I think there's a degree of to take sort of science metaphor, there's a degree of, the more companies we put of similar interests and work together, collaborate into a space, you're building a certain amount of mass, and with that mass comes a gravity, and that gravity will pull students and people who will want to stay in the region. And of course, beyond that, just beyond the working environment, it's important, therefore, that they have good places to live. Residential housing is affordable and viable and sort of meets the needs of the population and sort of, for their kids to grow up. So I think there's a bigger piece here, which is actually linking the whole sort of 360 aspect of what it is to live in a region and work in that region, which is quite exciting. And I think we're starting to sort of see that, certainly from some of the conversations I've had.
Yeah, I think just to add, we're supporting FI Real Estate in Southampton, and obviously Nelson Gate is a brutalist building, very tired. And again, because of where we see the future of work, we've been trying to create that STEM community to capitalise on actually bringing people together. Because what we're finding is that graduates or students, they don't start driving until they're 27. It's much later. Like when I was 17, I wanted to get my driving license straight away, but actually these guys don't drive, so they need easy accessibility. And it's trying to, again, when we talk about placemaking, it's about making the environment that's right for the end user. So again, Elaine, then let's talk about the retaining of talent. In terms of the businesses that you're supporting, what is the most significant challenge about attracting the talent for those STEM organisations?
Well, it's a very dog-eat-dog in STEM recruitment. It's who's offering the best space, who's offering not just the best salaries, but the best benefits, and do people have a sense of belonging when they go to work? And so the piece about the environment is really, really important for businesses to keep their talent engaged and interested in coming to the office, because you have, blood-sucking recruiters that will be tapping the talent on the shoulders and saying, come with us, come to this better environment, come for this better experience. And it's not just about salaries that businesses offer. It's actually the places where they are at, how accessible it is that space going to make them feel like they're fulfilling a purpose, especially the younger generation coming up and through into some STEM subjects. They have a completely different mindset. If you're not being sustainable, that could be a big thing in retention, because they are very hot on, making sure they create a future for their children that isn't going to be too hot and horrible.
I guess just moving over to Richard, we've explained it already in terms of we've got a breadth of occupiers on the South Coast, but I think we all go about our day and we just concentrate driving on our lane, do our own thing, and there's some really prominent occupiers they're global. So if you were able to share some examples of those companies that operate in the region, and what roles have these companies played in enhancing the local economy to kind of foster innovation?
Well, these companies, I think we all know, and aware of them. We have a huge sort of pedigree in defence, manufacturing, and engineering. So, the first ones that spring to mind are always companies like BAE, Systems, Kinetic, and various companies that are associated with them. I think what's really interesting is the infrastructure that they create, the local economy of suppliers for those companies that also, thrive on that STEM community. So I was looking recently, and we wrote about a company, Astral Technology. So they were attracted to the region. They're based in Dorset Innovation Park, home of Kinetic, well, one of the homes of Kinetic. And obviously they do lots of military work there. Astral, great small team working in very high-end radioactive fusion reaction products that can then be used or can be used for medical purposes, for precision medicine. So you've got kind of this amazing infrastructure where the big companies are also allowing some of the smaller companies to collaborate with each other and also to develop new solutions. So I think there are big, there's the Airbuses, etc. But it's actually, we write about the companies that work with them, that try to, the unsung heroes sometimes. So that's kind of the way we see it.
Yeah, because one of the interesting facts, which I only learned a couple of months ago, is that Hampshire and Surrey is the largest space cluster in the UK. And that is something that we don't talk about. And when I say space, I'm not talking about office space, I'm talking about out of space. And it's incredible that it's all happening in our region. And I was with Ocean Infinity doing a podcast interview. And again, they're creating this remote centre that the technology is creating these 78-metre ships, which can be remotely controlled from Woolston, and the ships can be in Singapore. So everyone's doing some creative innovation, but we need to talk about it.
Absolutely, and without blowing our own trumpet, we have sort of programs like Tech Wars, which is a great opportunity to sort of showcase the things that are going on in the region. So in that maritime world, I think at the Tech Wars we also have the guys that are making electric yachts, which sounds crazy, but that's exactly what people are doing. New types of inboard engine, like an impeller style engineering, and you think, well, this stuff is amazing, but not enough people hear about it. So really, that's part of our job, is that we can help raise some of these innovative companies to the surface and make sure the wider community is aware of them, so they can work with each other. So yeah, it's a really interesting time.
And I think with a lot of these businesses, they will have their own ESG agendas. So it's making sure that we're marrying it up with the real estate that we're providing, because ultimately they've got to sign off on it as well, haven't they? So
yeah, absolutely. And I think you mentioned it, James, that and both we've all spoken about the next generation of employees are so value driven in terms of understanding. I think you have to have a strong ESG story, not just, we heard about it earlier, through your supply chain, and if your client requires that you have really strong ESG story to tell, but now through the workforce that you're trying to employ as well. So that's the future. I think everybody's going to get used to it.
James, just want to add?
I think on top of that, and as Elaine mentioned, is not just the young workforce coming in, but Elaine, you mentioned the age at which people are doing things. What we're seeing is the age of parents is shifting, and particularly young professionals or those highly skilled professionals that tend to have children at a later date. And so if they're coming into an area, take the Solent region for example, where we see an influx coming in, and we're looking at setting up a second base in Southampton because it's such an exciting environment for these tech areas. We've got people who have children who are aged 14 or 13 or 12 who are looking to come back into the area for these highly skilled jobs, but they're finding there's a lack of education or there's a lack of infrastructure to kind of draw them back in, and that's sort of shifted 10 years older than we would have seen sort of 20 years ago in the market as well.
I think that's really interesting what you were saying about people having children later. That landscape completely changes how even the more senior employees in businesses will be stopping to take maternity breaks, will be looking for flexibility and all of those things. And Robin was saying, thinking about childcare. So landlords now have to be more aware of what's going on socially and environmentally, more so than ever before, to accommodate the world we're living in today.
Well, thank you for wrapping that up. So that's brilliant. Is there any questions from the floor?
Yes, Ian Knight from Knight Architectural Design. One for James, but I should actually call Mr. Doherty because you were my son's teacher through GCSEs and A-levels. I've had 5 work experience students from UTC. 2 of them I've taken on to apprenticeships. And basically, it's just a shout out there really. We're talking about the next generation. We've got a waiting list for kids to come and work experience with us because there's very little offered by the built environment across the area. Schools are always telling us that we're one of the few people who even answer the phone to them. I'm in a room full of my peers here. Many of us could take on these kids, and you'll find, even if they don't necessarily know what they want to do, by the end of a week with you, they can find out what they definitely do or definitely don't want to do. So really, UTC, biggest raving fan of it. You've all got to go and visit. It's amazing. But yeah, apprenticeships are just so geared up in this industry, but are overlooked very often. So if I can just encourage you all to kind of talk to your local schools, talk to UTC. They're always looking for places for kids to be put on work experience. But yeah, I can thank you very much, sir.
Questions? Okay, so thank you so much for your insightful opinions and supporting us. So a massive round of applause to our panelists.